So, we were getting into this feeling of rhythm. That's actually a great exercise. If you're feeling like you can't just blow the steady note, you can't quite feel yet that you're in the canoe and it's going smoothly over the water. You feel that there's some turbulence. Well, you ride the waves in a certain kind of way by creating a little bit of your own movement. And then you warm up to be able to be playing fluid and more steady. I think this is very, very basic. And sometimes we put too much too soon on what we want. I don't care what level a person is at. You know what I mean? You can be an intermediate player, in high school, fairly advanced player. You can be in a freelance artist, someone in a symphony orchestra, a soloist. You know, there comes a time where you might have to do things differently. And in the earlier you have an attitude of, I will move with what's going on and gradually connect myself with the organic process that will lead me to where I want to be. And believe me, sometimes, I remember at a certain point, you know, if I was really banged up from playing or even a bit injured, this would take a while to get things going. Sometimes I'd have to warm up little bits all day long. I remember once I really had a bad chop injury. And I was kind of coming back, but I never knew how it was going to feel like the next day. Now that's an interesting thing. That would worry a lot of people. It did worry me, but then I got used to it and I accepted it. And once I accepted it, I could actually do what was needed for the playing to progress. Because a lot of certain kinds of warming up can be actually very therapeutic on the muscles. In fact, it's a form of physical therapy on the embouchure, on the air, and on the mind. So, in this day, one of the days I was starting to tell you about, I remembered, oh my word, how in the world am I going to play bolero tonight on the radio, live? I picked it up. I had a range of about a third. And I just gradually warmed up all day long, finding a shape that worked, keeping things close together. Didn't worry if I was playing overly loud or big. Had to adjust my musical style to be able to play bolero. I used to play it more articulate, a little more aggressive, a little bit more like this. And now I had to do a little bit more Dorsey-ish and smooth and fluid and just let it float out. And I said, hey, look, from the midst of this injury, I actually was put into a situation where I had to find a different musical way to play it, which was actually great. So we need to change in order to continue to exist. That's what a great mentor of mine told me. So, warming up is the same. The way maybe you warmed up years ago isn't the same way you're going to always warm up. So, let's say we're starting to get a little older, or even if we're younger and we feel like we're a little shaky, play these blissy type things. Eventually, that oscillation that you were putting in with the slide, you can start to feel that almost spinning the air through the horn. And Chester Schmitz used to say that, the great former tubist of the Boston Symphony, one of my mentors. Used to say, spin the air through the horn. And once I started to do the gliss thing, and I started to feel that, and then sped it up. Did you notice I kept making the distance smaller and smaller and faster, and then had the sound just be without it, but I still felt that oscillation. It's a form of rhythm. It's a form of continuous, sequential movement. So, now in that particular exercise, which is great because it leads us into tonguing in a natural way. I started legato tonguing right after the gliss, kept that smoothness, and then boop, 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 boop. I know we talked about articulation in our last session, and the way someone articulates, it really has to be discovered individually. But my tongue is a little bit lower now, even when I don't tongue ta ta ta. It's more do 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 do, where part of my tongue really, the middle of it is more touching the top of the teeth, and the bottom is actually much lower than that. Do do do, almost on the bottom. This is something that has to be discovered. Do 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 do, and the legato tongue is way up high, in a very la or an incredibly light da way back. So by doing this kind of thing, I'm warming up a few things at the same time. Or you can go. Okay? So there's an exercise. And this is to start to get into a fluid, moving state where your mind, your emotions, and your body are in balance and coordination with each other. So you'll actually be able to have an easier time playing. Now the musical approach to this is in the fluidity, is in that M for music, but M in this case meaning movement with gesture. Tell on that one, I was glissing and then putting in an articulation every now and then. I hope that came across. That's all natural slur. That obviously isn't. I could have gone. Not quite as in tune as I'd like. So, if it's not quite in tune, you don't freak out. You go over it. And find it. Give yourself finding room. Warming up is allowing yourself the space to get everything together. And you can start to get very, very efficient at it, where you start to cover more ground in a shorter period of time. But this depends on how you might be feeling that day. I'm not going to pick up my horn and go as the first thing. Even if I could. You know, I just don't. I like finding that time and working on things. So my warm-up certainly isn't the same as it was when I was 20, and it's not the same at the age I am now. I do mouthpiece. I've talked on many tapes about the mouthpiece playing, and half covered, and open, and just with the lip. These are all things that can be done to supplement your basic routine of warming up.